When the last mine whistle blew in Copper Falls, Montana, it didn't just signal the end of a shift, it signaled the end of everything. Within 6 months, a town of 847 people became a ghost town of two. Everyone left. The teachers, the shopkeepers, the families who'd lived there for generations. They packed U-Hauls and drove away from homes that suddenly had no value, no future, no reason to exist. Everyone left, except Harold and Margaret Calloway. 83 and 81 years old, respectively, married for 62 years, living in the same house Harold built with his own hands in 1961. They weren't leaving. And when 12 motorcycles rolled into Copper Falls on a cold October morning, those bikers made a decision that would change everything. They weren't just passing through anymore. Before we dive into this story, if you believe some places are worth fighting for and some people deserve better than abandonment, hit that subscribe button. This story is about what happens when a community dies and what it takes to bring it back to life. Copper Falls, Montana sits in a valley carved by glaciers 10,000 years ago, surrounded by mountains that turn purple at sunset and white with snow 8 months of the year. For 127 years, it existed for one reason: copper. The Copper Falls mine opened in 1897, back when Montana was still rough territory, and fortunes were made by men willing to go deep into the earth and pull wealth from stone. The mine grew, the town grew with it. By 1962, Copper Falls had a population of 1,200, 3 churches, 2 bars, a school that went through 12th grade, a main street with a hardware store, a pharmacy, a diner, a movie theater that showed films 3 weeks after they premiered in Helena. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. The mine provided everything: jobs, identity, purpose. The rhythm of the town moved to the rhythm of the shifts: day shift, swing shift, graveyard. Men went into the mountain and came out covered in dust, their lunch pails empty, their bodies tired, their paychecks enough to raise families and buy homes and believe in futures. Harold Calloway spent 43 years in that mine. Started when he was 19, fresh out of high school, newly married to Margaret, who was 17 and pregnant with their first child. He worked every position there was: mucker, driller, shift boss, safety inspector. He knew that mine the way sailors know the sea, with respect born from understanding that it could kill you if you stopped paying attention. He retired in 2004 with a pension, a bad back, lungs that wheezed in the cold, and a small house on Maple Street that he built himself over 2 summers in the early 60s. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a porch that wrapped around the front where Margaret kept flowers in the summer. They raised 4 children in that house, buried 2 of them, one to a car accident in 1979, one to cancer in 2003. The other 2 moved away for work, settled in Seattle and Denver, sent cards at Christmas, and called once a month with increasingly gentle suggestions that maybe it was time for Mom and Dad to move closer to family. But Harold and Margaret weren't moving. "This is where we built our life," Harold would say, standing on that porch, looking out at the mountains that had surrounded him for 8 decades. "This is where we stay." Then, in March 2023, Copper Mountain Corporation announced the closure of the Copper Falls mine. Declining copper prices, depleted veins, rising operational costs. The language of corporate earnings calls that translated to, "This place is no longer profitable." The mine closed in June. By August, the town was dying. The exodus happened fast. Families with young kids left first. Can't raise children in a town with no jobs, no future, no reason to stay. The school closed in September when enrollment dropped to 14 students. Teachers took positions in other districts. The principal retired early. Then the businesses closed. The hardware store, the pharmacy, the grocery store that had been run by the Chen family for 30 years. One by one, the lights went dark. For sale signs appeared in windows. Then the signs faded in the sun, and no one bothered to replace them because no one was buying. The bars held on longest. Places always do when people need somewhere to grieve, but even they were gone by October. The movie theater's marquee still read "Closed for Remodel 2019," a lie that had become invisible through repetition. By December 2023, Copper Falls had a population of 2, Harold and Margaret Calloway. Their house still had electricity because Harold paid the bill every month, even though he was the only customer left on the grid. The water still ran because the system was automated and no one had bothered to shut it off. Mail still came 3 times a week because federal law required it, though the mailman drove 47 miles round trip to deliver bills and advertisements to a town of ghosts. Their children begged them to leave. "Dad, you're 83 years old. Mom's 81. What if something happens? What if you fall? What if there's a fire? There's no one there to help you." "We'll be fine," Harold said with the stubbornness of a man who'd spent his life underground, betting his life every shift that the mountain wouldn't take him that day. "You're being ridiculous," their daughter Sarah said during a particularly heated phone call in January. "You're risking your lives to stay in a dead town." "It's our town," Margaret replied quietly, "and it's only dead if we say it is." So they stayed. 2 people in a town built for 1,000. Harold kept the snow cleared from their driveway and the sidewalk in front of their house. Margaret kept the flowers watered in summer and baked bread every Thursday, even though no one was coming to share it. They walked Main Street some afternoons, past the empty storefronts and the houses with broken windows, and they'd remember. "That's where the Johnsons lived. Remember their boy Danny? Went to Iraq, came back different. That's where we bought your dress for the winter dance, 1959. You look so pretty. That's where we heard Kennedy was shot. Everyone gathered outside the pharmacy around old Mr. Henderson's radio." They were walking through a graveyard of memories, the last living witnesses to a town that was disappearing into history. And then, on a cold morning in late February 2024, they heard something they hadn't heard in months: the rumble of engines. The Iron Riders Motorcycle Club out of Billings, Montana, were on their annual winter shakedown ride, a tradition where they tested their bikes after months of storage, made sure everything was road-ready for the season ahead. 12 riders, veterans, most of them, men and 2 women who'd found brotherhood on 2 wheels after coming home from wars that never quite left them. They weren't looking for a cause that day, just a good ride through mountains that were still white with snow, roads that curved and climbed and reminded them why they loved this. Marcus "Steele" Davidson was riding point, 58 years old, former Marine, 2 tours in Iraq, came home with a Purple Heart and nightmares that finally started to fade about 5 years ago. He'd been president of the Iron Riders for a decade, and he led with the kind of quiet authority that came from having made life-or-death decisions in places where hesitation meant body bags. They'd been riding for 3 hours when they saw the sign. Copper Falls, established 1897, population 847. Someone had spray-painted over the population number. Now it read, "Dead." "Want to stop?" Crank called over the radio. "See what's up?" Steele glanced at his fuel gauge. They could use gas, and something about that sign bothered him. That word, "dead," in angry red paint. "Yeah, let's check it out." They rolled into Copper Falls at 11:47 a.m. on February 23, 2024. And immediately, everyone knew something was very, very wrong. Main Street was empty. Not Sunday morning quiet, not lunch break lull. Empty in the way abandoned places are empty, where the absence of people feels like a presence itself. Storefronts had broken windows. Snow had drifted into doorways and stayed there. A stop sign hung crooked, half torn from its post. Paper and trash tumbled down the street like urban tumbleweeds. "Jesus," Hammer muttered, pulling up beside Steele. "What happened here?" They rolled slowly through town, engines rumbling off the empty buildings, the sound echoing in the silence. Past the closed gas station, past the boarded-up grocery store, past houses with sagging porches and doors that hung open, revealing dark interiors stripped of anything valuable. It looked like a movie set, like a place that had been evacuated before disaster struck, except the disaster was slow and economic and had already happened. "There," Ace said, pointing. One house at the end of Maple Street had smoke coming from its chimney. The Iron Riders exchanged glances. Then, without discussion, they headed toward it. Harold Calloway heard the motorcycles before he saw them. He was in the garage, trying to fix the carburetor on his old Ford pickup, a 1987 F-150 that had been giving him trouble since December. His hands weren't as steady as they used to be, and the cold made his arthritis worse, but he was determined to get it running again. Margaret appeared in the garage doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Harold, there's people here." "People?" "Bikers, looks like." Harold set down his wrench and walked to the front of the house, Margaret beside him. 12 motorcycles sat in a rough semicircle in front of their home. Their riders were climbing off, removing helmets, stretching road-stiff muscles. They looked exactly like what they were. Middle-aged men and women in leather vests covered with patches, weathered faces, the kind of people Harold's generation had been taught to fear. But Harold Calloway had spent 43 years working alongside men from every background, every walk of life. He'd learned long ago that what matters isn't what people look like, but what they do. The man who appeared to be the leader approached, tall, gray-bearded, walking with the distinctive gait of someone who'd taken shrapnel and learned to live with it. "Good afternoon, sir." The biker's voice was respectful. "Sorry to intrude. We were passing through and, well, we were wondering what happened here." Harold studied him for a moment. Then he smiled slightly. "How much time you got?" They sat on Harold and Margaret's porch for 2 hours while the old man told the story of Copper Falls, about the mine, about the town that grew around it, about generations of families who'd built lives here, about the closure and the exodus and the slow death of a community. Margaret brought out coffee and sandwiches, refusing to hear protests, insisting that she'd made too much anyway. A polite lie that everyone accepted because it allowed her to be hospitable and them to be gracious. The bikers listened without interrupting. That's what you learn in the military and on the road. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is just listen. When Harold finished, silence settled over the porch. Finally, Steele spoke. "And you're the only ones left?" "Just us," Harold said. "Kids keep calling, telling us we're being stubborn fools. Maybe we are, but this is home. This is where Margaret and I built our life, where we raised our children, where we buried 2 of them in the cemetery on the hill." His voice roughened slightly. "I'm not leaving them, not leaving this place." Margaret reached over and took his hand. Steele looked at the other riders, saw the same thing in their eyes that he was feeling. That particular recognition that happens when you meet people who are fighting a battle they shouldn't have to fight alone. "Sir," Steele said slowly, "we're supposed to be back in Billings tomorrow, but I'm wondering, what if we stayed a few days, helped out with whatever needs doing around here?" Harold blinked. "You'd do that? Why?" "Because we can, because you shouldn't have to do this alone, and because—" He looked around at the empty street, the dying town. "Because places like this matter, and people like you matter, and sometimes people just need to know someone gives a damn." Harold's eyes filled with tears. Margaret pressed a hand to her mouth. "We'd be grateful," Harold said quietly. "Then we'll stay," Steele said. "Few days, see what we can do." Those few days turned into 3 months. The first day, they inventoried what needed doing. It was a long list. Harold's truck needed repair, the gutters on the house were falling off, 3 windows had cracked in the winter cold, the roof had a leak in the back room, the generator that Harold used as backup power was on its last legs, the garage door wouldn't close properly, which meant cold air got in and made it nearly impossible to work on anything. "That's just our house," Harold said. "Town's got bigger problems. Water system's gonna fail soon if someone doesn't check the pumps, roads need clearing, power lines are down in 3 places from the ice storm last month." "We'll figure it out," Hammer interrupted. He was a contractor in his day job, ran a construction company in Billings. "One thing at a time. Let's start with your house. Make sure you two are safe and warm. Then we'll see about the rest." They worked from sunrise to sunset that first week. Crank, a former diesel mechanic, tackled Harold's truck, had it running in 2 days with parts they drove 90 miles to find. Hammer and his crew fixed the roof, replaced the windows, installed new gutters. Ace, an electrician, rewired the garage and got the generator running properly. Margaret cooked for them, insisted on it, made huge pots of chili and cornbread and coffee that she served on the porch at lunch. And the bikers ate like they were starving, praising her cooking until she blushed and swatted at them with her dish towel. "You boys stop, it's just food." "Ma'am, this is the best chili I've had in 10 years, Crank said with absolute sincerity. "My wife can't cook like this." "Then you bring her by and I'll teach her," Margaret said. And everyone laughed because Margaret was treating this like they were neighbors who'd be around forever, not strangers passing through. But something was happening that none of them quite expected. They weren't feeling like strangers anymore. On day 8, Steele called a meeting. They gathered at the old gas station on Main Street, the one with the covered pump area that gave them shelter from the wind. "Listen up," Steele said. "We came here to help an old couple for a few days, and we done that. Their house is solid, truck runs, they're safe." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But I've been thinking, this town, it's not dead, it's dying. There's a difference. Dead means it's over. Dying means there might still be time." Hammer crossed his arms. "What are you saying, Steele?" "I'm saying we could do more than fix one house. We could fix the town, or at least enough of it that Harold and Margaret aren't living in a graveyard." "That's a hell of a project," Ace said. "We're talking about, what, 50 houses? Infrastructure? That's months of work, not days." "I know. We've got jobs back home, families, responsibilities." "I know," Steele repeated. "I'm not saying we all stay. I'm saying I'm staying. Anyone who wants to join me, I'd welcome the company. Anyone who needs to head back, no hard feelings." Silence. Then Hammer spoke. "My crew can handle things for a few weeks without me. I'm in. I got vacation time saved up, but looking for a reason to use it. This seems like a reason." One by one, they committed. Not all of them for the full duration. Some could stay 2 weeks. Some could stay a month. 2 needed to head back, but promised to return on weekends with supplies and more hands. By the end of that meeting, they had a plan. They were going to rebuild Copper Falls. Word spread fast in the way it does when something unusual is happening. The mail carrier mentioned it to someone in Helena. That person posted about it on Facebook. A local news station picked it up. "Biker gang rebuilding ghost town" was the first headline, and still cringed at the word gang, but at least people were paying attention. A reporter showed up on day 15. Rachel Kim from the Helena Chronicle, driving a Subaru covered in bumper stickers, carrying a camera and a notebook and a genuine curiosity about what was happening in Copper Falls. Steele gave her the tour. They'd cleared Main Street of debris, fixed the stop sign, boarded up broken windows to keep animals and weather out, and started repairs on 3 houses closest to Harold and Margaret's, the Johnsons' old place, the Hendersons, and a small bungalow that had belonged to a teacher named Miss Morrison. "Why?" Rachel asked. "Why are you doing this?" Steele thought about it. Because Harold and Margaret deserved better than slowly dying in a ghost town. Because places like this built America, and we've gotten real good at abandoning them when they're no longer profitable. And because, he paused, because we can. We've got the skills, we've got the time, and it feels like something worth doing. Rachel's article ran on the front page 3 days later. "The Bikers Rebuilding a Montana Ghost Town. How 12 Writers Are Giving Copper Falls a Second Chance." The article went viral. The donations started small. A hardware store in Butte sent paint and brushes. A lumber yard in Helena donated wood for repairs. A roofing company sent 3 pallets of shingles. Then it got bigger. A construction company sent a work crew for a week. A plumbing supply company donated pipes and fixtures. An electrical supply company sent wire and breaker boxes and everything they'd need to make houses livable again. Volunteers started showing up. College kids on spring break looking for service projects. Church groups from across Montana. Veterans organizations who'd seen the story and wanted to help their own. Families who drove hours to spend a weekend hammering nails and painting walls and being part of something that felt important. Harold and Margaret's quiet street became a construction site, then a hub, then the beating heart of something none of them had expected, a movement. By week 6, they'd fully restored 12 houses. By week 8, the old grocery store was being converted into a community center. By 10 weeks, someone had got the power grid stabilized and the water system repaired. And people started asking the question that changed everything. Could we actually live here again? The first family to move back arrived in April. Tom and Linda Matthews, early 60s, retired teacher and nurse respectively. They'd lived in Copper Falls for 30 years before the mine closed, moved to Billings afterward, and spent every day missing the mountains and the quiet and the community they'd lost. "We saw the news," Linda said, standing in front of the house they used to own, now repaired, repainted, windows replaced, porch rebuilt. "We saw what you all were doing, and we thought maybe we could come home." They moved in 2 weeks later. Then came the Johnsons, then the Chins, who'd run the grocery store and wanted to try again. Then a young couple from Seattle, both with remote jobs, looking for a cheaper place to live with better views and a real community. By June, Copper Falls had a population of 47. By August, 63. The school district agreed to reopen the elementary school if enrollment reached 20 students. It reached 23 by September. A small grocery store opened in October, not the old building, but a new co-op model, where residents bought shares and kept it stocked through bulk orders and local suppliers. A cafe opened in November, run by a woman named Rosa, who'd been a line cook in Billings and wanted to own her own place, but couldn't afford city rents. Main Street wasn't thriving, but it wasn't dead neither. It was alive, breathing, growing. The Iron Riders finally left Copper Falls in November, 9 months after they'd first rolled into town. The night before they left, the town threw them a celebration in the community center. The old grocery store they had helped convert, now filled with tables and food and everyone who'd come to call Copper Falls home again. Harold Calloway stood up to speak, his voice shaking with emotion. "Margaret and I, we thought we'd die here alone. Thought we'd be the last people to turn out the lights. We made peace with that." He paused, wiping his eyes. Then these folks showed up. Strangers. Didn't know us anything. And they stayed. They worked. They cared. He looked directly at Steele. "You gave us our town back. You gave us hope when we'd run out. And you showed everyone that places like this matter, that people like us matter, that community isn't dead as long as someone's willing to fight for it." The room erupted in applause. Margaret handed Steele a gift, a wooden sign, hand-carved and painted, that read, "Copper Falls, Montana, rebuilt by Brotherhood, 2024. Goes on Main Street, so everyone remembers." 2 years later, Copper Falls has a population of 127. It'll never be what it was. The mine isn't reopening. But it's found a different identity, a place for remote workers and retirees and people who want mountain living without mountain prices, a place for artists and writers and people who need quiet. The school goes through 8th grade now. There's talk of adding high school classes if enrollment grows. Main Street has 6 businesses, not many, but enough. A cafe, a co-op grocery, a hardware store, a small medical clinic staffed by a visiting doctor twice a week, a library that operates out of someone's living room, and a motorcycle repair shop run by Crank, who decided he liked Copper Falls more than Billings and relocated permanently. Harold Calloway died in his sleep in January 2026, peacefully, in the house he built with his own hands, in the town that didn't die because 12 strangers decided it mattered. Margaret still lives there. She's 83 now. Her children visit more often, but she won't leave. "This is home," she says simply. "This is where Harold and I built our life. This is where he's buried. And this town, it's alive because people cared enough to fight for it." The Iron Riders still come through twice a year. It's part of their route now. They stay with Margaret, do maintenance on the houses they rebuilt, check on the people who've become family. And every time they roll into town, the sign on Main Street reminds everyone what happened here. Copper Falls, Montana, rebuilt by Brotherhood.